So if you live to be 100 years old, you will spend roughly 50 of those years completely unconscious, just asleep.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal piece of arithmetic to confront right off the bat.
Right. And then you spend another 20 years as this bewildered, developing child, plus, at least 20 more years in the steep physical and cognitive decline of old age.
Which leaves you with optimally a 10-year window, maybe 15 if you're lucky.
Exactly. A tiny microscopic sliver of peak actionable vitality. So the question we are asking you today is, why are you spending that irreplaceable time trapped in an office answering emails for a corporate machine that just does not care about you?
It's the ultimate question, really. And, the most profound spiritual traditions demand that we look at that math without blinking.
Yeah. And we're speaking directly to you today as a fellow seeker, because you see the cracks in the modern landscape. You see the burnout and the spiritual emptiness of a society that measures a human life like a spreadsheet.
Right. So today we are digging into the ancient wisdom of the Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically excerpts from the 7th canto. We're looking at the teachings of Prahlada Maharaja,
Who was this highly realized saintly boy, but ironically born into a dynasty of atheistic, materialistic kings.
Exactly. And his curriculum completely dismantles the illusion of our modern accumulation culture. It's a blueprint that is thousands of years old, but it feels like it was written, I don't know, yesterday, to diagnose today's crisis of meaning.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this ancient text diagnosing modern hustle culture is just incredible to me. Where does Prahlada even begin?
Well, it begins entirely with time management, or rather, the catastrophic mismanagement of our lifespan. That breakdown of the 100 years you just mentioned,
Yeah.
that isn't a modern statistical model. It is Prahlada's own calculations straight from the text. He points out that the 50 years lost to sleep are essentially lived in the darkness of ignorance. We are, biologically incapacitated.
Right, we literally can't do anything about it.
And then the 20 years of childhood are consumed by a lack of mature consciousness. We're just distracted by sporting and playing.
Which brings us to the final 20 years, old age. And the narrative we are universally sold today is that we should grind relentlessly through our 20s and 30s.
And 40s.
Yeah, and 40s. We're told to exhaust our bodies, completely ignore our deeper spiritual calling, and climb the corporate ladder, all so we can supposedly enjoy life in retirement.
But Prahlada's math exposes that as a complete scam. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a profound misallocation of energy.
A total scam, because by the time you reach those final decades, the body becomes invalid.
Right. You lose the stout, robust energy required for both rigorous physical enjoyment and deep spiritual focus.
So instead of peaceful liberation, those years are typically consumed by intense anxiety, like you're stressing over health crises or protecting your estate.
Yeah.
We are literally trading our peak window of spiritual capability for a beach house we'll be too tired to visit. There's a quote from the Roman philosopher Seneca in our notes that mirrors this perfectly.
Oh, right. What was that one?
He says, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Prahlada argues that true intelligence means beginning spiritual practice from the very dawn of life.
Exactly. Not saving it for the leftovers of your timeline. Because if you wait for the leftovers, the momentum of your material attachments will be completely unstoppable.
Okay, but if the math is this urgent, if our actionable window is mathematically that tiny, what is a psychological glitch that makes us voluntarily hand it over to this endless grind?
That's the real mystery, isn't it? Why don't we just walk away?
Yeah, why do we stay?
The text diagnoses this self-sabotage using one of the most vivid analogies in the entire Bhagavatam. It's the trap of the silkworm.
Oh, wow, the silkworm.
Yeah. The Sanskrit term used is geham anthakupam, which translates to the dark, blind well of materialistic family life.
Wait, a well implies you fell into something by accident. But a silkworm doesn't fall into a trap.
Exactly the opposite. A silkworm is not captured by an external predator. It extracts a thread from its own body and meticulously weaves a cocoon around itself.
It uses its own vital energy to build a structure that eventually imprisons it so tightly that it can't escape. And it just dies inside.
We secrete our own affections and build our own prisons, layer by layer.
So how does that start for us? Like, what's the first thread?
It begins intimately with the basic demands of the senses, our desire for specific tastes, physical comforts, sexual pleasure. That is the first thread. Then we wrap a thicker layer around ourselves.
Like deep affection for a spouse. The cocoon expands.
Right. We add a layer for our children, whom the text notes speak in pleasing broken language, tying our hearts in knots. Then comes the extended family, the siblings, the parents.
And it doesn't stop at biology either. I mean, we keep spinning. We add the outer, heavier rings of the cocoon, the
Hmm.
mortgage, the luxury furniture, the investments, yeah, the pets. And eventually, our broader national or political identity, we spin this massive, elaborate structure of attachment until we are entirely immobilized.
Because every waking moment is dedicated to maintaining the cocoon. We restrict our own spiritual movement entirely.
The irony is just staggering. We consider ourselves highly advanced, right?
Yeah.
Like we have university departments dedicated to calculating risk management.
Oh, sure.
If a multinational corporation loses a fraction of a percent of its profit margin in a fiscal quarter, the board of directors calls an emergency meeting. It's this massive crisis of lost capital.
Yet we are entirely blind to the fact that we are imperceptibly bleeding out the most irreplaceable asset in the universe, our human life.
We don't even have a metric to calculate our spiritual laws. We believe the illusion that money is sweeter than honey.
The text actually points out that thieves, soldiers, and merchants will actively risk their physical lives, the only vehicle they have for realization, just to acquire more wealth to pad the cocoon.
That's wild. And Prolata doesn't spare anyone in his critique, does he?
Not at all. He strips away the veneer of our so-called advanced civilization with a very sharp observation. He notes that regardless of education, someone operating purely to maintain their material cocoon has the exact same consciousness as an animal.
This is the zero-sum cats and dogs mentality, right? Like uneducated animals fighting over scraps.
Think about it, a highly educated geopolitical strategist drafting a complex international trade treaty, or a brilliant CEO maneuvering a hostile corporate takeover.
Society views them as the absolute pinnacle of human intellect.
But Perlata argues that if their ultimate goal is simply, this territory is mine and that territory is yours, or I must secure these resources to feed my dependents at the expense of yours, they are fundamentally operating on the exact same software as a street dog guarding a discarded bone.
Wow. The scale of the destruction is just vastly larger. The dog barks at a rival. The CEO ruins 1,000 livelihoods. The politician launches a drone strike.
Yeah.
But the internal machinery, that panic to protect the cocoon, is totally identical.
So true human intelligence, therefore, isn't about technological advancement or accumulating a larger pile of resources. It is the ability to transcend that animalistic duality of mine and yours.
So, okay, we are sitting immobilized in this dark well of our own making, spinning our silkworm threads, fighting like highly educated dogs over financial bones. Naturally, that creates immense friction.
Right.
We are collectively exhausted. The burnout epidemic we see today, it isn't just a symptom of poor scheduling. It feels like a spiritual symptom.
It is the inevitable result of fighting a war against the fundamental physics of reality. To cure this exhaustion, Prahlada introduces the concept of karma.
Okay, let's break that down, because when most people hear karma, they think of some mystical punishment system.
Right, but we need to define karma properly here, not as punishment, but as a rigid, inescapable law of cause and effect.
Because the modern self-help industry is entirely built on the premise that we can manifest or hustle or, biohack our way into a state of permanent bliss.
And the Bhagavatam presents a profound counter-axiom to that. Material happiness and material distress both arrive automatically.
Automatically.
Yes, they do not require your frantic endeavor in this life. They are pre-programmed by your past activities.
Explain the mechanism there. How can happiness just arrive automatically?
Think of your material experience like an algorithmic feed on a social media platform.
Okay.
You don't consciously ask the algorithm to show you specific ads today, but your past clicks, your past searches, your previous actions have already preloaded the timeline. A content is coming.
Wow. That's a great analogy.
Prahlada points out a very logical proof for this. Nobody wakes up in the morning and actively endeavors to invite disease, heartbreak, or misery into their lives.
No, we spend billions of dollars on healthcare and security trying to block it out.
Yet distress arrives right on schedule, forced upon us by the laws of material nature. Prahlada's argument is that if the negative consequences of your past actions arrive uninvited, then whatever material happiness you were destined to experience based on your past karma will also arrive automatically.
Without your exhausting blood, sweat, and tears endeavor.
Precisely.
Wait, I need to test this, because it sounds dangerously close to nihilism.
So?
Are you saying that all the grueling hours we put in, the extreme workaholism, the obsession with optimizing our diets and our sleep cycles to force maximum productivity and joy out of a physical body, Is that all just a massive waste of energy?
From the perspective of absolute truth, it is entirely futile. The material world is fundamentally designed as a realm of temporary shifting conditions.
So we're trying to fix something that's meant to be broken.
You are trying to squeeze eternal permanence out of a machine built for decay. The text uses a fascinating Sanskrit term for this endless repetitive struggle, karvita karvanam. It means chewing the chewed.
Chewing the chewed. Oh, man. You take something that has already had all its flavor extracted, and you just keep grinding your teeth down on it, desperately hoping it will suddenly taste different.
And it yields zero spiritual profit. You might temporarily rearrange your economic situation, sure, but you haven't changed your fundamental existential condition.
Right.
By accepting that your material quota of happiness and distress is largely fixed by acknowledging the algorithm, so to speak, you can stop fighting this exhausting horizontal war.
You realize that adjusting the furniture inside the silkworm cocoon does not equate to freedom. But this requires a massive pivot.
And a total paradigm shift.
If we stop trying to hack the material world, if we detach from that horizontal scramble for resources, all of that energy we used to spend on anxiety and accumulation suddenly frees up. Where does it go?
It goes vertical. The focus shifts entirely to reviving our eternal relationship with the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord. And what's fascinating here is the radical claim the text makes. Succeeding in this vertical relationship is infinitely easier than succeeding in the material world.
The ultimate ease of pleasing the Father. Let's look at the mechanics of people-pleasing today, because we live in an era defined by a constant low-level terror of public opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
You are expected to please an ever-shifting corporate culture, maintain a flawless personal brand, and navigate the unforgiving algorithm of cancel culture. It is an impossible, infinite variable.
Because the material world is inherently demanding and fickle. The source texts astutely point out that even individuals possessing massive power, top political leaders, titans of industry, they're frequently ruined, deposed, or publicly destroyed over slight discrepancies in their behavior.
Or just shifts in public mood.
Exactly. Satisfying the demands of human society is an exhausting, moving target that ultimately ends in failure.
Society demands unending, flawless execution. But the spiritual alternative operates on a completely different paradigm. Pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, referred to here as Noraya, is described as naturally easy.
Because the Supreme Lord is described as the Bija Purda Pita, the seed-giving Father.
A true father possesses intrinsic, unconditioned affection for his children.
Right. You do not have to earn your existence or justify your worth through your economic output. Furthermore, you don't need to travel across the universe to locate him.
You don't need a billionaire spaceship, and you don't need an Ivy League degree.
The text explains that he sits as the eternal observer deep within the core of every single heart. He is present within the highest, most powerful demigods like Lord Brahma, all the way down to the consciousness of inert plants.
And even resides within the microscopic atoms themselves.
Everywhere.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The audience you have been desperately trying to please your whole life is already residing within you.
And because this relationship is your original natural state, the text promises that the Supreme Father only requires a slight, sincere endeavor to begin removing the curtain of external energy.
It's a profound shift in orientation. Stop performing for an external algorithm that views you as an expendable data point and start communicating with the eternal source that actually sustains your existence.
But turning inward naturally provokes a very practical question for anyone living in the modern world.
Yeah, how do you live?
Exactly. If you achieve this realization, if you stop chewing the chewed, accept your karma, and focus on the Supreme within your heart, how are you supposed to interact with everyone else?
Do you just check out? Do you retreat to a mountaintop and abandon society? Because if it's all a temporary shifting illusion, the temptation is to just ignore the suffering of others, right?
That is a common misunderstanding of spiritual detachment. Prahlada's fifth and final lesson demonstrates the exact opposite. True spiritual realization does not result in apathy. It results in radical compassion.
So once you connect with the root of existence, your interaction with all the branches, meaning the rest of humanity, transforms into the ultimate form of activism.
And Prahlada lived this out in the most intense environment imaginable. There is a specific narrative in our sources about his tiffin hours.
Right, essentially the recess or leisure time at his school.
But this wasn't a normal school. He was being instructed by two deeply materialistic teachers named Satka and Amarka. Their entire curriculum was based on demoniac principles.
Like how to tactically identify your friends to build alliances and how to ruthlessly crush your enemies.
It was the absolute distillation of that zero-sum cats and dogs mentality,
Yeah.
a masterclass in worldly politics and tribalism.
It's the exact same curriculum we use to teach modern networking and corporate ladder climbing today.
Unbelievably similar.
So the teachers step out of the classroom to attend to their household duties. The other boys, Pralada's peers, immediately call him over. They want to play.
They want to spend their tiny, fleeting sliver of boyhood time in sporting and bewilderment.
But Pralada refuses the invitation to play. He sees a rare, opportune window.
He stages a profound rebellion against the entire material establishment right there. He gathers his schoolmates, who are all born into the same atheistic, power-hungry culture, and he begins to preach pure consciousness to them.
And to clarify what pure consciousness means in this context, he was urging them to adopt a mindset of absolute spiritual devotion.
Right. He was telling them to completely drop the demoniac curriculum of manipulating the world for territorial gains. He introduced them to Sodom.
Universal friendliness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because true activism isn't about defeating a political enemy or redistributing material wealth. As we established, material conditions are largely fixed by the algorithm of karma.
Adjusting the material conditions of a prisoner doesn't actually free them from the prison.
Exactly. True compassion is showing mercy to all living entities by enlightening them to their actual spiritual identity without any discrimination based on their background.
You act entirely without enmity.
You become the ultimate well-wisher because you are handing them the only tool that can actually cut the threads of the silkworm's trap.
Wait, so if I adopt this, right?
Yeah.
If my only goal is to cultivate this universal friendliness and satisfy the Supreme Lord, what happens to all the things I actually still need to survive in the world?
It's like what?
Like economic development or personal goals, or even the desire for spiritual liberation itself. Do I just lose all of that?
The Bhagavatam makes a breathtaking, almost counterintuitive promise regarding those goals. It states that when a person abandons the frantic chase for the American dream, when you stop fighting the material energy and dedicate your actions to satisfying the Lord, the very things you used to desperately chase become entirely obsolete to pursue.
Obsolete because you don't want them. Or obsolete because you don't have to chase them.
Because you don't have to chase them. The text specifically lists the 4 traditional goals of human life. Dharma, which is religion or duty. Artha, economic development. Kama, sense gratification. And moksha, liberation. For a pure devotee, these 4 goals literally stand at your door like servants, waiting with folded hands to carry out your orders.
Oh, wow. That completely flips the script on hustle culture. You don't have to hunt down security anymore.
The mechanism is simple. If you want to nourish a massive tree, you don't waste your time running around with a tiny dropper trying to water every individual leaf and branch. You pour water directly onto the root.
And the root sustains everything else.
When you satisfy the supreme root of all existence, all necessary material and spiritual advancements automatically flow to the branches. They wait to serve you effortlessly at the proper time. It replaces a life of grinding anxiety with a life of absolute security.
We have covered a massive, life-altering arc today. We started by confronting the brutal, unforgiving math of our finite timeline, shattering the illusion that we can just grind our youth away and somehow buy peace later.
We examined the tragedy of the silkworm, how our own unchecked affections for wealth, status, and extended identity weave the very cocoon that suffocates us.
We analyzed the futility of fighting the laws of karma, recognizing that endless biohacking and wealth accumulation is just chewing the chewed, trying to force eternal joy out of temporary matter.
We contrasted the impossible, soul-crushing demands of pleasing modern society with the supreme ease of turning inward to satisfy the Father in our own hearts.
And we discovered that true rebellion, true activism, is the radical compassion of universal friendliness, stepping completely out of the matrix of friends and enemies. There's a remarkably poignant song lyric from the sources that perfectly distills the urgency of this ancient curriculum.
Which one?
It says, "We spin like the silkworm, trapped in the thread. Wake up, sleeping soul, and let yourself see."
It is a devastatingly beautiful call to immediate consciousness. And as we conclude, I want to leave you with an absolute assurance that builds upon everything Prahlada has taught. It's a principle sourced directly from the Bhagavad Gita regarding this specific spiritual path. The Sanskrit is Savalpam api asya dharmasya trayata mahatopayat.
Break that down for us. What is the promise there?
The translation is, Even a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Consider the contrast. The material world demands absolute perfection. One mistake can cost you your career, your savings, or your reputation.
Yeah, it's unforgiving.
But the spiritual path honors every single step. Nothing is ever lost. Even the slightest, most microscopic, sincere endeavor to turn inward and water the root protects us from our greatest existential fears. It begins irreversibly to unravel the silkworm's thread.
Even a little advancement, that changes the entire calculation. We started this deep dive talking about measuring success with that cold, balanced spreadsheet that ultimately just leaves us exhausted and empty.
And Prahlada Maharaja gives us an entirely new metric for a successful human life.
So as you move through your day, I will leave you with this single thought to mull over. If even the slightest sincere endeavor protects you from your greatest fears and frees you from the anxiety of endless accumulation, what is the very next small step you can take today to stop weaving your silkworm cocoon and start watering the eternal root of your own heart?